Welcome back to Worth the Effort. Now, for the past year, I've been teasing y'all about the big, massive project we're going to be doing in 2022. The TearDrop trailer build. This is going to be the biggest, most complex, and most expensive project we've ever done here. So it's just kind of taken me a while to save up the money to get going on it. I've been doing a lot of production turning work behind the scenes for my wholesale clients to get the ball rolling, so to speak. Now this video is going to be the first in the TearDrop build series, in that I made a lot of pre-purchases of items that I needed to get on hand physically before I can kind of finalize a lot of my designs. So we're going to be unboxing those, and that'll give me a good opportunity to discuss the reasoning behind a lot of my decisions. Now, I need to have a disclaimer with y'all right up front. Do not watch this series if you're wanting a good quality, follow along and build it yourself series, because I'm being stupid in my work here. There are a good half dozen high quality TearDrop build series out there on YouTube that are a lot more economical, a lot more feasible, a lot more efficient, and will probably get you something much closer to what you want to do. I'm going out there on this one. Now, I think the most common quality design I've seen out there is people will take a utility trailer. Sometimes they're a little bit flimsy, but that's not that big a deal because they will use a laminated sandwich of plywood, 2x material, insulation, then maybe aluminum skin or some other kind of skin on the outside of it. And because of the design and engineering of how they glue and screw that all together, the entire structure makes a really quality camper. I'm just not going to go that route. Because I am a YouTube woodworker, that means my narcissistic arse thinks that I can do better. My design is going to be the bastard love child between a threesome of a Maloof rocker, a timber frame barn, and a cedar strip canoe. No right-minded individual would build a TearDrop this way. But it is going to give me a lot of opportunities, a lot of teaching opportunities to show different ways of doing stuff. So maybe if you're doing your own RV build or, building a tree house or something like that, you could come up with ideas or possibilities for a more intelligent design. Now, I do kind of anticipate that this is going to take me the better part of 2022 to finish. So I'm going to intersperse these TearDrop build video series with my more normal woodworking and wood turning content. It's not going to be a traditional vlog build series where I just kind of chronicleize what I've done in a certain time frame. I'm going to film constantly, but I'm going to consolidate the subject matters so that in the end the series will make more sense. For example, the trailer build, the foundation for the TearDrop, well, there are a lot of people that are interested in DIY trailers. So I can make an entire video on just building the trailer and not even touch the TearDrop. Just laying out that it's a custom design for the TearDrop applications that other people can kind of use as a guideline. So that could be a very early video that will come up fairly quickly. Whereas a video on the electrical components, well, that's going to cover everything from wiring the trailer to installing the plastic cover on the last sconce on the outside of the video. So that's actually something that I won't be able to complete as a video until the entire project is finished. So, you can see I will be filming that kind of information, the entire build, but it will be consolidated at a certain time frame so that when I have the series, it can be kind of broken up into chapters. Now, real quickly, let me explain why I feel I need this TearDrop trailer. Maybe it'll help justify some of the reasons behind my illogical decisions. And maybe it'll also kind of enlighten you to what you're going to be able to get out of it once I've completed it. How I'll be able to use it as a resource for creating content on this channel. Because this is going to be a work vehicle for me. This is not going to be something I'm taking the Grand Canyons or the Tetons or anything like that for recreational. I want to use this as a residence when I'm on the road, but also as a mobile content creation editing station, a studio, so to speak. Having that kind of mobile content creation studio station and a workshop I can take with me will create a lot of content creation opportunities that won't be available to others without a huge financial cost. It's just not viable for other people to do this kind of stuff, and it's a resource that you'll be able to benefit from. I'm going to be able to go to museums and cover different furniture and woodworking aspects there, talk to individual makers, maybe even do some collabs and stuff like that, visit furniture shows, competitions, all that kind of stuff that involves a lot of travel, which a teardrop, once that is built, that's a sunk cost. So the only additional cost for me to do this cool kind of stuff, to create really cool educational content that's just not out there, will be a little bit of time and gas money. It'll be a financially viable way to help me differentiate my channel and maintain its woodworking education content. So why the teardrop design? Well, it comes down to that desire to have that mobile workshop that I could take along with me. Because if I'm out on the road, I want to actually be able to contribute in collabs and stuff like that. And showing up to another woodworker that has the same exact stuff, well, that's not really going to progress our craft. I need to be able to collab with people that don't have a woodworking background or a woodworking tool set and be able to provide that kind of resource to them. Plus, I still need to make original content while I'm on the road that is different than what the teardrop places I'm visiting. Just the normal content of my site. And I need to maintain my wholesale woodworking schedule. I still need to provide for the stores that buy stuff from me. So being able to do that kind of work on the road will really make this a financially viable setup. I need to have this functionality, if maybe not the efficiency, be able to fit in the back of my pickup. That's I could foresee situations where, you know, I might have to look up a local art market and farmer's market that could sell some of the stuff I made on the road to, you know, cover the cost of maybe gas or repairs. That desire for having the mobile shop kind of eliminated a lot more attractive options out there. I mean, as a content creator, building a van life kind of build out would have been content gold. But if I want to take the shop on it, that also means that I would have had to have had a utility trailer towed behind it, which means anywhere I was going to work, I would have to take the entire shebang every single day. I couldn't just set up a base camp at a state park and stuff like that and then go to a person's house or go into downtown to a museum or stuff like that. I would have to take everything. Now, I did seriously consider building a truck camper because that takes about 5 minutes. You can lower legs over there and just drive out from underneath it. But once again, that would have necessitated having that utility trailer. So I could leave the base camp, but I would still be dragging that trailer everywhere. So that kind of necessitated some kind of towable base camp that I could leave and just leave all my tools in a tool tank that I can take wherever I go. So I don't have to constantly unload and load stuff up. I could just drop that off at a campsite wherever, even if it's in the middle of a field or somebody's big ranch or something like that. And then I could do all the work or content creation with just the truck. It just makes much more sense to have a towable campsite that you can leave and have the vehicle be a tool tank. So why teardrop instead of maybe something more search engine friendly, maybe something more of interest to the general population, like a restoring a vintage Airstream? It comes down to money. Right now, I have a full-size truck with a full 8-foot bed. It is a base model V6, not even the turbo V6, but it will haul 2,000 pounds in its bed and also tow 5,600 pounds. But it can't do both at the same time. You know, if you have a heavy trailer out there, the tongue weight on the cab takes away the loading capacity, so I won't be able to fit 2,000 pounds of tools in the back of that bed. I'll have to fit 2,000 pounds minus the tongue weight, minus however much fatter I get. So it just kind of adds up that you can't have a huge capacity trailer with a lighter weight truck. Now, I could just trade that in and get a stronger truck, but I know that that would make my gas bill just astronomical. I've had this thing for 12 years and 250,000 miles, and I know fully overloaded with tree trunks and stuff like that in the back of that, going down the highway, I still get close to 20 miles per gallon. Now, I do know that a trailer will add drag, so that will drastically drop my mileage, but even if I lose 5 miles per gallon because I'm towing an aerodynamic drag back there, that's still better than the unladed mileage that a larger truck would get. So it just seems to me that this is the financially smarter way to go, especially since it's already paid for. So a small, lightweight teardrop trailer would not only be more financially economical for me, but it also let me take more tools. Now, over the past year, I have been designing, sketching, redesigning, all that kind of stuff, coming up with a whole bunch of ways to do it. And here's some highlights of the overall theme I'm going to be going for. And in a teardrop trailer, because space is so tight, you work in layers. Now, the back of it, of most teardrops, they have a little galley out here. And you might put a cooler right there. I'm going to do the same thing, but it's going to be underneath that one, so you have the galley on top. And on this side, I'm actually going to extend the base all the way down so I can put a bed that doesn't come all the way up here. This can easily be storage. And up on top of that storage, I can have a desk with a fold down leaf that will give me a full 5-foot desk over here. I can place a chair right there. I can slide up underneath it, which means there will be room for me to install a lower AC, a hot water heater on top of that, and still have the galley fully open on the back side. So I have a place to sleep and a place to work in this entire setup. And on the front, I will have a box that will be an electrical thing, which will allow me to do a lot of really cool stuff and open up opportunities. Because I really could see, if I'm out on the road in some kind of emergency like Hurricane Ike or Hurricane Rita happens out there, I can go out, set up outside of town with a bunch of other emergency workers, and this could be a power station for some people to come in and power up their cordless tools or their cell phones or something like that. I can just leave it here with the electrical stuff coming out there and take my truck and go help people out. So this set up properly as a base could provide a lot more functionality than just a residence and office. So with this tightly spaced as that stuff's going to be, I think you can understand why it's so important to get stuff in early so you can get exact measurements so you can finalize your design. So let's start unboxing. So let's start with unboxing the trailer stuff, because there are a lot of parts here that I skimped on for a reason and splurged on for a reason because of this unique application. Now, I am building the trailer, but this is not the cheaper way to go. I mean, you could pretty much buy a used utility trailer, buy a used pop-up trailer, all that kind of stuff, take off the pop-up stuff, reuse a lot of the internals. You can just buy a brand new utility trailer and probably spend a little bit less money, but I don't think you would get as good a quality as if you're designing something specific for yourself, and I'm going to be way overbuilding this. Also, suspension-wise on trailers, you can do a lot of different options here. I'm actually going with the most basic option, what they call a spring axle, and they've been using this kind of technology since, we went across this country in wagons. A lot of people are going to say I'm making a huge mistake in choosing a leaf axle suspension. A torsion axle would give you a lot better ride, and they have some independent suspension, some example being Timberin, that would perform much better. I am giving it to you. Both of those options would perform better. But the thing is, parts availability. I am seriously worried about if something goes wrong while I'm out on the road. Yes, a torsion axle is somewhat common, but I just can't go down to a Tractor Supply, Harbor Freight, Northern Tools, or even Wally World and get parts that will work with them. And a lot of times those are on back order, especially with specialized stuff like the Timberland. You could basically have your trailer stranded out waiting for parts, and this being a work vehicle, not a recreational vehicle for me, I would rather go with the suspension package that I can find replacement parts just about anywhere, and they're going to be sitting on the shelf. Now, in saying that, I did splurge a little bit and I went for a well-known name brand, Dexter, for all my components, for the simple reason they have a reputation for building really good quality stuff, and they build to that standard that is going to be available at all those other places. Now, if anything ever goes wrong with this one, I am probably going to be buying lesser quality replacement parts to work with this one, but at least it'll get me on the road until I can fix it. And trailer parts, this kind of trailer parts, are not that much money. Now, speaking of money, at the end of this series, I will do a breakdown video of telling you how much I spent. I'm keeping accurate records there. I'm just not going to go into that right now. And I will try and give you alternatives. So where I splurged, I will show you a way that you could probably save money. Now, the axle I went with is a 3,500 pound weight capacity. Same with the springs. Those are both overkill. I am going to stick with a 3,500 pound weight axle, but in the future, I might switch out to softer springs to get a better ride for the trailer. Most TearDrop trailers are really lightweight. I mean, some people even build them less than 1,000 pounds. I'm not building towards weight, I'm building more towards durability, but I really doubt that my trailer will be more than 2,000 or 2,500 pounds when it gets fully loaded, and that sounds extreme to y'all, but when you get to the end of this one, you'll see why. Tires choice. This is another area that I both skimped and splurged. I went with the most common size wheel, the most common size lug nuts, placements, and the most common size tire. But I did splurge in that I went for a radial tire instead of a bias ply tire because it's a single axle, so it would be okay, and it'll be a lot more durable for higher speed stuff, and less likely I will get a blowout. I might get a flat, but not a blowout that way. I did go for a non-name brand. It's a Contender, stuff like that. A 205/75 R15, again, the most common size. Once again, for replacement reasonings. These should also track very nicely at 75, 80 miles an hour on the highway. Where I splurged was I bought them from a national discount tire store so that if anything goes wrong, they are warranted and I can head to them. And I did go ahead and get 3 identical ones, so I have 1 spare that I can keep on the trailer. As you can see, you can save a lot of money from what I did by buying, you can buy these same wheels and tires from, Harbor Freight and all that kind of stuff, but you won't have that national access to repairs and everything like that. So I kind of splurged right there. I also splurged and I'm getting, going back to the axles, I will say this is somewhere that I was kind of disappointed in my purchase now that I think about it, because these things that attach the springs, normally they come already pre-welded on, so the spacing is there. My kit did not, so I'm going to have to weld those onto the axle, which means I'm going to have to size it just right so that I get the wheel and overhang and the fenders all sitting right. It's not going to be standardized, in other words, but I can customize it. I'm just going to have to take very careful measurements, which is why you want to get parts in advance. I did go ahead and splurge for electric brakes, just because I am going to have my truck overloaded, so I won't have that extra braking capacity there, and a safety reason. But weight-wise, this should be under the required weight to legally require brakes. And the axles I got are common, long-lasting. I won't have to lube them every 200 miles, that kind of axles. I splurged a little bit to get better axles for this setup. Now, one thing I'm kind of worried about now in my design, it would be nice to have the tongue tube that attaches to the truck actually extend all the way back to the back of my trailer. That way, if there's ever an emergency, I can attach something to the back of the trailer and actually tow my truck, and it won't be stressing the trailer. But to do that, when you have to have ground clearance, and I'm not sure that the suspension package and everything like that will allow that extra space for that ground clearance, and that is relevant. And some of the purchases I got, like these, they're the actual hangers that hang down a certain distance. So it only goes down for the suspension eyelets that far. I suppose I could get longer ones of these to get a little bit more ground clearance for that one. I'm gonna have to investigate it. These weren't that big a purchase, but also they're not painted, so I'm going to do all that kind of stuff too. Next up for the trailer, I got these leveling jacks. I went ahead and opened one of the boxes so you can see what it's like. These are not the scissor style jacks that kind of spread out this way. These are the ones that have the little legs that fall down, just because it's not that much weight and I could get a little bit more travel, which means I can set my camper up on fairly uneven level and then just kind of winch it up so it's level. And I did go ahead and get 4. You could get away with 3 of these, 2 in back and 1 on front, but they sell them in packs of 2. So if you're getting 4, you can do all 4 corners of your trailer to level it up that way. I did specifically choose the kind that also had this style lug wrench on the side. They give you this right here, but I can just buy a little socket and attach it to my impact driver to make leveling this a lot easier. Why work harder if you don't have to? And for the fenders, I kind of probably made a stupid decision here, and I got these round ones that'll fit over it, and they already come. I specifically look for kinds that have this inner well right here, because that'll protect the wood side that I'm going to be doing. Why I say I probably made a mistake here is if I could have gotten some that would hold weight, so you could use them as an extra step or a seat or something like that. A lot of people do that one, but those are generally square. And my stupid decision, I like the looks of the round fenders better than square fenders, so I went with this choice. And I had to get these in because I didn't really trust measurements online, and these are going to have some supports welded off the frame to make them somewhat rigid. Additionally, for the trailer, I went ahead and got a complete wiring kit, both for my truck and the trailer itself. And I am going with a 7-pin style instead of the traditional 4-pin, because I want to be able to hook up the batteries on the trailer so I can charge as I'm going across the country based on the alternator on my trunk. That would be an extra power source if needed. And wiring wise, I want to be sure that whenever I turn my truck off, that circuit cuts off so I don't drain the battery in my truck charging that one. So I bought all the components for both my truck and the trailer to get it all set up. In addition, if you're doing the 7 pins with electric brakes, you have to have the capacity to do a trailer brake controller, and I'm going to have to install that on my truck too to test things out. So those are all things you have to take into consideration. But this right here are components that I kind of needed for whenever I'm welding up the trailer, because you don't want to go back and weld stuff off after it's all painted and everything. I also bought a lift for the spare tire, and I went ahead and invested in these rollers. I'm not going to unpackage that one. Hopefully you can see the picture on there. Basically, you weld these to the back of your trailer frame so that as you're coming out of like gas station or something like that might have a steep incline, instead of dragging your trailer, they'll kind of hit this and roll on those. Less damage to your trailer that way. And they aren't that much money. So this should complete the parts I'll need for the trailer, with the exception of the steel, which I've got money set aside for that, about $1,000, hoping that will cover it because the price of steels went really high and it's slowly coming down. That's kind of why I've been putting it off. That's a commodity that I can get at the last minute. Just about all metal stores will have it. Now the box I'm using for the trailer is probably an area I spent more than I could have, but probably less than I should have. I basically bought the cheapest freight damage toolbox that you have out there, and it's lockable, which is what I want, because very rarely will I be going into this one. I am setting this one up as the power station. I'm going to be starting out with a 100 amp hour LiPo battery, but I want to have the capacity to expand out to 4 or maybe even 6 of those. So I'm going to be building some shelving in here, the bottom one being for the batteries and the upper ones being for all the components that will go with, you know, solar charging, shore charging, truck charging off of the alternator, charging off of a battery, all that kind of stuff. And I want to have this all centralized so that all I do is send a power feed into the trailer, into the fuse box there. That way, if for whatever reason in the future I want to, take this whole component off, I can still power the TearDrop by just a simple battery or something like that, or shore power. I won't have all this other stuff in here. And if there's any extra space in here, it will just be a long-term pantry kind of storage, because I really do see that once you get all this built up, you won't be opening this very often. Now, the other thing is, on one side of it, I'm going to have all the connections for power in, but on the other side, I do want to have connections for power out, and that'll be the side that has the door out there. That way, as I mentioned earlier, if I ever go into a disaster recovery area, I can basically plug in a bunch of extension cords, and maybe out to power strips out there, where the community can come in and charge up, their cell phones, or if they're a worker, they can charge up a battery or something like that, based upon the solar and the battery backup power out here. That's kind of why I want eventually to have 400 amp hours in here. Additionally, I would like the ability to run a AC at about 80 degrees all day long in case I ever get a dog and they'll need to stay there. Speaking of AC, I'm not going to open this one because it's basically just a standard window unit. It's the smallest window unit I could find. With the only splurge I did, I went to try to find the quietest unit out there. Now, one thing about window units is they actually have 3 air zones. You have air coming in, getting cooled, and then shooting out. So you're sucking your house's interior air in and shooting it, recirculating back out. But on the outside of your house, you actually do have 2 air zones. The thing is, most people don't think about it because it's exhausting outside. So those air aren't going to mix that much. But if you've got it in a confined space, what you don't want is air to be sucked in and go over the cooler to be heated up. That's that heat exchange, and then hot air being exhausted outside. If it's in an enclosed location, basically you would be exhausting out the extra hot air, and then it'd just recirculate back in front, and you would lose efficiency. You have to somehow figure out a way to block off the air so that the air coming in is not the same air that's being shot out. So you have 3 zones: a intake, air intake, outtake for the inside of the trailer, and a intake for the outside of the trailer, and an exhaust for the outside of the trailer. And I'm going to be doing that one by putting this AC at the bottom of my trailer and leaving it open and creating a box around it that will be insulated and watertight. So this will effectively be sitting outside of my trailer. The same is true for probably the biggest splurge I've done so far in this build, in that I've not bought a ice box. I've bought an actual refrigerator freezer. It's a top-loaded one. The reason why I wanted that one is because if you're out in the field, if you open a door, basically all the cool air exhausts out every single time. The hot air comes in top and it just kind of pushes it all out. Well, if you have this kind of setup, you can open it up and the hot air is rising, so the more cool air will stay out there, so it'll be a lot more efficient in my application. This is just the size of a good size ice box. But what's cool about it is it's a true refrigerator with a compressor. But just like that AC that uses a compressor to cool off the AC air, this uses a compressor to cool off the air in here. It has to have an exhaust for that hot air. So this and the refrigerator are going to share that insulated, watertight box that's going to exhaust down underneath the TearDrop. And with that, I bought a special mount that will allow me to pull it out lengthwise, because this is one area that I would like to leave open to the public in emergency situations. So I could fill this up with water, cool water, and just tell people to come get what they need if they have no other access to it, and then lock up the rest of the trailer. So this will have a door kind of here. People can slide it out. I can leave it out. People can get what they need. I won't have to worry about the other stuff. This was specifically built for this, but the price of both of these together, it rivals your apartment refrigerator or your house refrigerator. This was a splurge. But I needed to get them in so I could get measurements and I could figure out how to mount up this and still maintain clearance so that the galley isn't too high above it. The last thing that's going in that externally vent area is a very small water heater. This is a 2.5 gallon water heater. It's not an instant on water heater, but from past experience with this style, because I've had several of these in different places I've lived, that's long enough for a really quick shower, and they're really energy efficient. Plus the fact that I can turn it on and off. So when I'm not using it, I can just leave it off and it won't suck any electricity. But if I want to take a hot shower or I'm about to cook something or anything like that, I flick it on and within 10 minutes, the water's really warm, ready to rock and roll. And that first 2.5 gallons is hot water, but after that, it seems to maintain warmish water. So a shower is not that bad. This is going to be going above the ACs and stuff like that, just in case it ever leaks. So it'll just leak straight down. I'm still working on all the placements to get it just dialed in perfectly, which is why I needed to get it in before I started the final design. Now to go along with the AC and all that kind of stuff, I am going to install what they call a fantastic fan up top. These are kind of generic. I mean, this is a name brand, but they're kind of similar. You have turn it on and off. I did not get the one with all the remotes or a lot of the fancy stuff in there. It's just a very basic one, and this is a small enough thing that you can just reach them up and turn them on and off. For the most part, when you're in the camper, you're probably going to be having this cracked and slightly running. That's why getting this name brand one was nice, because from past experience that this one is pretty quiet in that small area. I do know a lot of people that get just a little vent, and that works perfectly fine as long as you have cross ventilation, some kind of windows that you can open up. Me personally, I'm going to have 2 windows on each side, but they're going to be deadlights. You're not going to be able to open them up. And then on the door, I'm going to have a window that can open up, kind of like one of those old vintage ones where the bottom stays closed and the top comes open up. And I can put a screen on that one. And that plus this will create cross ventilation for airflow to get rid of humidity, or for those times that I don't need the AC running. Now for the light, the windows, I did splurge, and even I will admit this was probably a stupid decision, but I went to a ship salvage yard and I picked up some old ship portals. These are aluminum. I can bolt them on to either side. This will be the windows for the just light. And for the door, I bought this one right here, which I will build a frame for, and that will be what opens to let screened in air come through. While I was at that ship salvage yard, they did have some restored lights like this right here. They just kind of repolished them and then rewired them. I'm probably going to have to rewire them again. And these are waterproof and stuff like that, and they can go outside or inside. I bought 5 of those. And then I bought some remanufactured handles, tie downs and grab handles and stuff like that you see on boats all the time. And I'll use those throughout the thing. This was just me wasting probably some money. Probably cost 3 or 4 times as much what just buying standard windows would have. But I think it'll be a good conversation piece, and it'll draw people to my TearDrop and TearDrop events, which will let me talk to them. Oh, and for heat, I just have a backup ceramic one. From what everyone tells me, these things get warm enough with just body heat because they aren't that much space, and they're fairly well insulated. And when it drops down below freezing, you still have to crack that top vent just to let the humidity out, and it still stays warm. So this is just kind of a backup that I'll use battery powered. Notice battery's the way I'm going throughout the whole thing. You know, when you lay all this stuff out, this is the first time I've done that. That's a lot of stuff to get inside a small trailer. And for those of y'all that are curious, yeah, the bike was a pre-purchase too, because it's getting mounted on the trailer too. That was a wise pre-purchase, wasn't it? Wasn't it? Yeah, it was. Tell me it was. So there we go. The Worth the Effort 2022 teardrop trailer build is off like a herd of turtles. We're going to make progress slowly but surely. Next up, I'm going to finalize the design for the trailer, go buy that steel, weld that up, and that'll be probably the first video in the series. I hope you're excited for what we're going to be exploring doing this, what I'm going to be learning, and all the mistakes and mishaps we're going to be having along the way. And after it's done, oh my, we're gonna have some fun with it. So, as always, please remember that it's always worth the effort to learn, create, and share with others. Y'all be safe and have fun.